G'day everyone, Benny Wallington here, peak performance coach and writer. Welcome to Performance Partying. Simple strategies to have your cake and vino too. Sounds delicious? Well, it is. This is most likely my favourite topic of the past 5 years, and potentially something that gets looked over when we talk about work life and life outside. I don't tend to think naturally about how we can improve and optimize how we operate when it comes to parties. Well, not anymore, because this is all about that. If you'd like, you can download our accompanying worksheet, which I highly recommend. Go to bluechipminds.com/pinnacle and follow along at your own pace. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking to you from, the Gumbe people. I'm on the Gold Coast, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land from which you are listening. And I'd like to invite you into a short collective breathing exercise. And whatever's happened to you prior to this, good or bad, let it go. And let's focus on being present. I'd like you to simply place your right hand on your chest and focus on your breathing. Feel your heartbeat slow down. And if you're not already, you can switch to nasal breathing. So in through the nose, out through the nose. Just notice that heartbeat. And then I'd like you to take your other hand and place it on your stomach. Perhaps your breathing is slowing down, which is good. Just notice the rise and fall of your stomach and your diaphragm. You can shut your eyes if you like, if you haven't already. Just really drop in. Let's do 3 more breaths. In and out. In and out. Just letting go of any negativity you may be feeling. In and out. And back in the room. Like I always say, breathe every time you remember to. It's conscious breathing. And I just want to let you know that you should be stoked on that little practice, because you've just given yourself a hug. If you're ever feeling a little bit low and disconnected, give it a try. I'm a 34-year-old dude with a questionable beard and have been giving myself plenty of hugs in public as well for many years. And combined with breath work, body awareness, it's kind of like a calming cocktail I like to call serenity. So let's cheers to that. And let's start off with, what is a party? And this is a bit of fun. If someone told me, if I was doing a workshop and someone said, Benny, this is what a party is, I'd be like, don't tell me what a party is. So obviously we've got our own idea of what a party is, but I'm going to take you through a few from history. So parties came about, or the term party came about in the 1600s. And according to the Huffington Post, did not become synonymous with merriment until the 1920s. So getting merry, I assume. Soiree, thanks to the French in the 1700s. A blowout in the 1825. I thought that was new terminology. And hold on to that thought, because the way we speak is very important into what we bring into reality when it comes to partying. I actually run a whole workshop on the language you use around when we party and have good times. Shindig, this must have been when the Australians got in on it in 1870. In 1901, it was called a bash. And then my favourite, in the 1940s, a wingding. How about that? And also, I'm going to try not to laugh, the alternate name for blowout was brouhaha. Now that sounds a bit more 1825, doesn't it? So I'm going to stick with brouhaha, because blowouts in the past have tended to be negatives. But I'm going to just talk about the middle of the road. So this looks like a pretty fun party, lots of colours. But just anything that's a gathering of humans in celebration is really a party in my books. So what is performance? And in this instance, I'm talking about peak performance. We're talking about performance partying. How can we perform at our peak while we party? You may have some connotations coming to the front of your brain at the moment, but let's keep rolling. So it's performing to the best of your ability. These are just some definitions. Obviously, definitions are definitions from individual people and not the defined one way of seeing what peak performance is. It can be a state of exceptional functioning, it can be a feeling and giving our best. So playing all out. But one that's just straight off the press, hot off the press, and I'm going to be speaking about Steve Kotler a bit in this presentation, but peak performance isn't something we win. There are no fixed rules, no established time frame for the contest, and the field of play is as big or as small as you choose to live your life. You have the agency to decide how much or how peak you can make your performance. And I always love Batman versus Superman metaphor. And this is actually from comic books, is a terminology called peak humans, which is the ability to have bodily functions at the maximum limit of human condition, meaning that the natural capabilities are near enhanced. So Batman's a peak human, Superman's a superhuman. But what Steve Kotler teaches us is that we're continually breaking the limitations of what we perceive to be a peak human. He actually wrote a book called The Rise of Superman about extreme athletes continually accessing flow to decimate what we previously thought were the limits of human potential. So in the realms of true peak performance, we can actually become superhuman. And what does that look like? An Avengers party. Well, not quite. And this is possibly the worst photo I could find of the Avengers at a party. Not looking stoked on being there, or maybe just didn't want their photo taken. But it's not about trying to throw superhero parties. We're not going to all get dressed up, even though that's awesome. It's more about exploring the potential of how we can show up in collaboration, in celebration, and understanding the concepts of performance. And so performance partying, I'm going to begin with my original mentor, Van Wilder, Party Liaison, 2002. It's a movie about a guy who never leaves university and just continues to be the king of throwing parties. And obviously I'm just kidding. This movie has not informed any of this workshop, but I do like to reference old movies, and that was a fun one. But I'll get on to someone a bit more serious or sincere, I guess, is Tim Ferriss. And he taught me essentially that everything is an experiment. And in my late 20s, I was following his work and experiments. And one of his things was to give up drinking and masturbation for a month. And I didn't like the sound of doing either of those things, but I loved his methodology of let's just play with things. We don't have to do the things that people have told us are the way forward all the time. We don't have to sit within the boundaries of what we're expected or what is expected of us. And so knowing that I needed to change my drinking habits but didn't want to give them up, my big question was, how could I have my cake and vino too, which was drink, party, and have fun, but also get rid of all the bad things that were associated with it? Because I was a bit of a Homer Simpson at that stage. Wasted on the couch a lot, poor performance and lack of motivation for work, plus the odd injuries. So I decided to create a system where I'd reflect every day after I drank and incrementally improve my drinking. It was the first time I'd decided to sit with my poor partying routine and apply the performance mentality. And since then, the simple self-reflection technique, which was just to ask myself, was it worth it each morning after I'd been out drinking, has helped thousands change their mindset around drinking and other party activities. Here's some images of people who started to do the same. When we start to party better, there's more things that we do better outside of the party, like our side businesses, like our fitness, like new hobbies, etc. And it was really beautiful to watch and has been ever since. Back to Steve Kotler. This is what the fellow looks like. He's just written a book called The Art of Impossible. He's written quite a few books on flow states and human potential, and this is an absolute cracker. I've only just started reading it, so this is literally hot off the press. And he has these 4 steps to impossible. And the first one is motivation. So what can we create? Are we motivated to apply performance to our next party? Is a question we could ask ourselves. Number 2 is learning. This is what helps us continue to play in this space. This could be self-reflection, like I just mentioned, and we can tap into wells of wisdom of the past. What are those immaculate parts of the days or nights when we had our best parties, or what could we see in the future? The third is creativity. So he calls that steering creativity. So what are we going to do to make a more creative space around the way that we show up in these times of celebration? And flow, which is the ultimate, right? How do we turbo boost the results? It's the state created by evolution to enable peak performance. The best parties I'm sure you've been to, and the best parties I've certainly been to, have involved high levels of creativity and lots of flow states. So I'll talk a bit about them in a bit, but we're going to crack on with a little bit more in depth and some questioning for yourselves about these 4 steps to impossible, or these 4 steps to peak performance. Motivation, like I said, what gets you into the game? And so I would always begin with motivation. What's my intention for this? What motivation do I have to upgrade my partying? Then I would ask myself, what do I need to consider? Who do I need to consider to make this change? I'm very important, but so are the people around me, so are the conditions with which I live. And who can keep me accountable? Who can keep you accountable to this? And you can answer these questions in the worksheet, of course, but we'll just keep rocking on. Learning. So what helps you continue to play? And we'll call this the feedback loop. So self-reflection, like I mentioned before, we're not good at sitting with our troubles of area of improvement a lot of the time. However, it's crucial when it comes to peak performance to reflect. It's why pro athletes watch videos of themselves back. Why did I drop the ball there? What happened? How can I improve next time? Imagine if we wore a GoPro at the last party we went to. Don't know about you, but some of the old parties back in the day, I would not want to watch the footage back. But it is important to sit in a space of true self-reflection so you can improve. I've got a bit of a fun exercise for you. It's actually one of my favorites. I do it with all my clients, and I did it for myself way back in the day when I was trying to change my relationship with my alcohol. And this was saying goodbye to your stupid friend. And I've borrowed this off a psychologist named Gabor Mate. And he says that some of us have a stupid friend, the version of us that has never left. Now, you can feel free to skip this part because you may not have that alter ego who's got you into trouble like I did. However, if it's of use and you feel called to do it, feel free to do this exercise. And you can shoot a goodbye message very similar to the one I originally wrote to myself, which went something like this. Hi, Wellington. By the way, my last name's Wellington. Wellington was my alter ego. We've been on some adventures. You've got me into some deep trouble, scars, unproductivity, guilt, anxiety. But without your mess-ups, I wouldn't have been able to find my way to running this workshop for these amazing humans, you guys. Onwards and upwards for more fun times, meaningful connections, and rad parties. You'll notice that within that messaging, I'm talking about the things of the past, and I'm also talking about the things of the future. So what do I want in the future? So thank you, Wellington. I'm done with you. It's time to step into the new human that is more of a performance partier. So feel free to say goodbye to your stupid friend and try and do it in a tweet. Let's keep it short and sharp. That's 280 characters. The third one is creativity. So how can you steer? And as with any great process, you can see how what you've learnt from your self-reflection bleeds into creativity. The feedback loops help you steer. And so I've got another convenient system called the 4 pillars of a great party. This is a great way for you to reflect on the past or design for a creative experience coming up in the future. And so the 4 pillars are the right food, the right drinks, the right location, the right people equals the best you. A pretty simple equation, right? But I actually, every time something's gone wrong and I've reflected and I've said, okay, what went wrong with this night, it was generally one of these 4 things. So, the 4 pillars. I want you to think back to one of the best parties you've ever been to. Give that party a name. Break it down with the 4 pillars. What have you learnt? What is coming up? You can apply the learnings to. So this is that future part. And how can you get creative? And the final one is flow. And Kotler says, this is how you turbo boost the results. Flow is elusive, but you can find it while partying, especially the wonders of group flow, which I'm not going to go into, but it's basically flow together. And I'm going to change gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about what's going on in the brain during flow. Well, actually what goes on in the brain all the time, but there's a special sort of concoction of electrical responses or neurochemicals that fire when we access flow. Okay, so thought equals electrical response, like we just mentioned. And we measure these in an EEG machine, and we measure the hertz, so cycles per second, and they're divided into bands delineating slow, moderate, and fast waves. So the slow waves begin at delta, which is between 1 and 3.9 hertz. Deep sleep and consolidation of memory are usually what's going on at these times, and learning. You might have heard it grouped into kind of regenerative sleep. So this is a big part of regenerative sleep. Theta, which is 4 to 7.9 hertz, which is your REM sleep, other regenerative sleep, and your meditations. So your turbo monks who do 10,000 hours of meditation, deep insights, powerful stuff in theta. Alpha, which is your brain's resting state. So this is when you're calm, relaxed, daydreaming, lucid dreaming, creativity. Beautiful state. Between 8 and 13.9 hertz, if I didn't mention that before, of course. Beta, fast moving. Beta. Between 14 and 30 hertz. And so this is good in low range beta for learning and concentration. So when we're attentive and taking stuff in, but it's also at the higher end is the negativity. That's where we have fear and stress. And that's when, the heart rate's booming and yes. And last but not least, or certainly not least, is gamma, which is at the 30 plus range. And this is where we're laying new neural networks. This is where we can piece together ideas. This is where we connect dots. Gamma is like a eureka spike, the aha moment you might have heard it talked about. And it's known as a coupled wave. So it's actually when you're dancing between theta and alpha states, which is pretty cool. And as John Coyno says, you're on the edge of having a major breakthrough when you are dancing between these theta and alpha states. And I've sort of put them into something that potentially will make it easier for you to remember them, because I tend to not remember them. So delta is your deep, like we were saying before. Theta is that thinker. Alpha is it's all fine. It's daydream time. Beta is you're busy, so you can be good busy and bad busy. And your gamma is your game changer. So hopefully that helps next time you're trying to explain something at a party. See what I did there? Neurochemicals. So this is the other part of the equation. I'm just going to take you through a few of these. You might recognize them. If you don't, it's all good. If you do, cool. So norepinephrine is the anxiety or excitement firing in the brain. Chemically, of course. Dopamine, everyone's heard of dopamine. That's kind of the buzz chemical at the moment, isn't it? It's our reward principle pleasure drug. So it's like the love. It's super powerful. It's very motivating. But as we know, we can get addicted to anything. Very addicted to dopamine across the board. Talk about vices in a moment. Endorphins are like your painkillers in terms of opioids and things like that. But the endogenous, so endorphins firing in the body by themselves, are 100 times more potent than medical morphine. And our endorphins underpin our bonding mechanism. So think about parties, very important for parties. Anandamide, which is an internal pain reliever, allows us to think laterally and creativity is in abundance. Serotonin, which is our pro-social chemical, can make you calmer, also can make you pretty stoked. Serostoken, maybe. And finally, oxytocin, which is, some people call it the cuddle chemical, the trust chemical. So very apparent in tribalism, but also very, connecting when we're talking about group flow. I suggest that this is one of the highest peaking neurochemicals during that. However, with all of these neurochemicals, during flow states, they're all firing off at a rate so much higher than anything else that you could either concoct with just one of them firing yourself or through exogenous intaking of substances, legal or illegal. And it's kind of this, that's why they say flow states are addictive, because we can't get to that state with anything else except for triggering ourselves into flow, if that makes sense. So no wonder we want to feel these feelings. And actually, if we tried to recreate a exogenous pill or something that was firing all of these things at once, our system wouldn't be able to handle it and we would actually die. Okay, now I promised some examples. I'm just going to riff through them. This isn't the definitive way to find flow, but these are some examples of where I've found either glimpses or extended flow states through partying. First one was a place called New Kind in Tasmania a few years ago, which was no drugs, no alcohol, so limited exogenous substances that you could put in your system, actually none, and it was fully relying on things like movement, sound, indigenous learning, being out in nature, new novelty, lots of elements of vulnerability and new practices. And it was 5 days. It was super connected, kind of how we probably used to live, where we were all sharing, breaking bread, sharing stories. And I just ended up with this incredible extended flow state at the end of it. And I've still not experienced anything since quite like that. However, I know it's possible. So that's the kind of party now that I think of when I think of how to have a really cracking performance-led party. Again, to riff on that, this was a party I threw in Sydney. So there was a little bit of extra pressure on myself, but there was high flow because it was really focused on musicians. So like I said before, whereas alcohol might have been right at the top as the motivator for being or throwing a party, this time it was musicians, food, connection, and then alcohol was still there, but it was way down the list. So I'd like you to inquire about, and it's a really healthy exercise to work out when you're designing a party or even attending, where does something like alcohol fit in the scale of importance, and where do the other things fit? And this is my baby. You may have seen it in another workshop, but this is called vice optimization, and this is a crucial element of having or finding optimal performance. And so I always say, select a vice, something that you love, but you can get into trouble when you push it too far. Tends to be things that look like Snickers and beers, but there's so many of them. And apply vice observation. So just like I said before, you can reflect on things you've done in the past, or you can take that information into a situation this weekend. And then once you've decided that you've got that vice that you're going to work on, each morning, ask yourself, was it worth it? It's really simple. Put it in a diary, do whatever you need to. And if it's yes, great, carry on, you're winning. And if it's no, you just ask yourself, how can I improve? You don't get down on yourself, you just say, how can I improve? So the question is there a vice you would like to optimize for a party coming up? And here's some world-class design by me explaining vice optimization for alcohol, but we can say partying. So on your left is your scale from minimal vice optimization to optimal vice optimization. And we've got the present, which we're in at the moment. Things like drink responsibly, which don't really mean anything. Dry July is kind of making its way up into there. It's good to have that abstinence in times, but how are we integrating the abstinence? That's where I feel like it's lacking. And most of us are on the kind of rat wheel when it comes to parties, and that doesn't have to have anything to do with alcohol, but we kind of just continue to do the same stuff week in, week out. And so what I suggest, and something that I've created with a lot of other people, is how can we create systems and ecosystems to allow us to step into vice optimization or higher levels of performance. And so I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but systems are really important, like we've talked about today. Strategies, self-reflection, mentorship's really important, having a community involved, and then having like alternatives, like what are people doing within the current environment that are alternatives. So you've got non-alcoholic drinks, you've got conscious parties, you've got lots of different stuff happening, and then you can do workshops and things online. Everything's online now, so that's great. And then obviously we've got wearables. So we've got wearables already. We can't quite measure blood alcohol level through our wearables, but that's coming. You've got your biometric feedback if you're using any of this technology, so you can measure how am I feeling in the morning from a data set. There's BAC capping, blood alcohol capping. So there's going to be potentially a pill that we take one day and it drops our blood alcohol. And so there's going to be many, many things like that. So depending on where you're looking to optimize your partying, that's really important for you to keep your finger on the pulse if that's where you want to head. So I hope that you're keen to jump onto the playing field with some of these new skills, because if you take some of these learnings that have resonated with you in this workshop, you can definitely seek out epic practices and support systems to allow you to step into the future with confidence. And I'd call that having your delicious cake and your vino too. So thanks again for tuning in. If you would like to download your complimentary worksheet, head to bluechipminds.com, and looking forward to speaking with you in the next one.